Hi, this is Sumaya Kamani and Hilary LeBlanc, and you're listening to Off the Rack, where we explore the evolution of fashion, its history, trends, and the stories shaping its future.
We acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples.
Cool. So this week we will be speaking with Carmin, Shaun, and Marissa about sustainability. We have Carmin, who is a CEO of Passen. Carmin is responsible for overseeing all aspects of the company's operations, including sales, marketing, finance, and production. Passen remains competitive in a rapidly changing market, and with his experience in the apparel industry, Carmin brings a wealth of knowledge, expertise to the position. He has a proven track record of successfully leading both private and public corporations, and his strategic vision and leadership skills make him a well suited for his position at Passen. We also have Shaun of Demascare, born
Thank you
in
so much.
Bangalore. Sorry. We also have Shaun of Demascare, born in Bangalore. Shaun, who now makes Toronto home, brings a wealth of education and experience to Demascare, which is an emerging luxury brand that combines the art of fashion with the design of architecture to create women and gender-neutral clothing. And last but not the least, we have Marissa Freed, who has lived and breathed fashion since birth. Her family's connection to the business traces back to her great-grandfather, who founded Freed's parent company, Freed and Freed International, in 1921. And in 2009, Marissa infused her experience at the International Fashion Academy and MBA into her family's business at Freed and Freed, where she eventually became the fourth generation president.
Thank you all so much for being here today. We are so excited to be talking to all of you. I'll start, Marissa, I would love to hear how how sustainability practices, what sustainability practice have you observed in the Canadian fashion industry, and how are they making a positive impact, especially considering like the longevity of Freed and Freed as a company?
Hi, thank you for having me. And I love that you already talked about something other than sustainability. So when I stumble on my words, I'm totally at home here. So perfect. First and foremost, I actually think that some of the really interesting change that we're seeing people buying into, specifically consumers, is the acceptance and the real deep dive into purchasing secondhand. And there's more and more businesses that are being built on that position alone and succeeding and growing. So I think it's something, when I look back prior to coming into Freed in the early 2000s, we were seeing different companies emerge, like Rent the Runway. And I think, the very early stages of Sex and the City with renting the bag. And I remember the scene so well. And now we have some of our very own Canadian companies that are making a presence, and they're doing a great job at it. So I think that, going back to your question, I think that is a huge change and left turn than where we used to be and how consumers used to shop and accept luxury goods, if you will, and in general what they consider high-priced merchandise and how they would shop for those high-priced items.
Absolutely. Shaun, what about you? What do you think in terms of how sustainability has changed throughout the Canadian fashion industry and the positive impact it's making currently?
Well, I think Marissa hit the nail on the head. Basically, what's happening now, or what I've noticed, is a change in mindset. And I think that's what's the most important and most necessary in today's world, is to think sustainably. And it's more of a lifestyle as opposed to just one choice. So I'm so happy to see Canadian designers take sustainability and interpret it in their own way, be it low impact materials or the way they produce, if they use digital technology for patterns and stuff, or the way they package goods, if plastic free, compostable packaging, and how they treat their workers by paying them a living wage, being ethically friendly, treating them right, fair trade, and I mean, there's so much happening, and I'm so happy that we're heading in that direction of change, because we, at the end of the day, we do live in a capitalistic society, and I think that's what's important, is the way you purchase, and to be thoughtful about how you purchase.
Absolutely. And Carmin, what about you? You come from this we've had the pleasure of meeting. You come from this very interesting tech perspective with sustainability. So I'm really excited to hear how you think things have changed over the course of the Canadian fashion industry and positive impact today.
Yes, and I go way back in the fashion industry. Cut my roots in the uniform business, which is also moving ahead on the sustainability front. But I'm noticing a huge change in people being mindful of social, environmental, and economic factors associated with the clothing they're wearing. In the old days, people would just purchase things and they really wouldn't care where they were made or where they came from. But now that's no longer a factor. Everybody wants to know now where they come from, how they're made, what impact they have on the environment, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm seeing a very strong change in the industry, and I expect it will continue and get stronger as the Gen Zs come up into the shopping world, right? So.
Absolutely. And I feel like there's so much to factor in when we're thinking about sustainability, about how people think in terms of, what was the source of the product? Where is it going? What materials have been used? So, how do you think your organization, Marissa, implements those changes? And what are some of the challenges maybe that come in the way of implementing those changes?
I think it's a very big focal point since I began my tenure, if you will, at Freed. I would say because we're vertical, which separates us from a lot of other manufacturers. So our offices are truly above our factory. So we own our own factory. We're really able to own every piece of the production, which then allows us to position ourselves as close to zero waste as possible. So everything for our brand is used. We truly believe in zero waste to the best of our ability. We use ends to make accessories. And if we have any inventory at the end of a season, because we have that factory, we then take that garment and we repurpose it into a new garment that then becomes positioned to sell in a fashion forward environment for the next season.
Wow, that's awesome. And what's your take on this, Shaun?
Well, being an emerging brand, I have the advantage of implementing or creating sustainable practices right from the get-go. I'm not going to lie, it's definitely taking its time, and it's not easy, but because it's so important to me, it's something that I'm dedicated to. So I have the luxury of, because I'm still a small business, of planning everything from the start to the finish to kind of make a circular business model. So it would be just like Marissa just said, using offcuts, using offcuts, being able to, I've researched and found somebody local in Toronto where they receive goods that would have otherwise been destined for the landfill. So I take those fabrics and use them to make some of the clothing. And then likewise, whatever I have remaining, whatever waste, because I aim for zero waste as much as I can. All those scraps will go back to this recycler who then shreds them, and they get used for filling in boxing bags and things like that. So it's being able to be creative and incorporate it into the business. And once I start moving along, having the base set up, it would be easier for me to grow bigger.
Yeah,
Keep it being
100%.
sustainable.
And it's definitely more challenging, not just to have sustainable practices, but also as a small business, it makes it even more challenging. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
What do you think, Carmin? What's your take on this?
Well, our contribution is kind of interesting because of the tech world we're in. And so, simply put, if we could ensure that the garments that people order fit properly the first time, we could have a substantial reduction in the production of garments needed to support this habit of sending things back and forth, which has gotten out of control right now in our country. It's a multi-billion-dollar problem, and the environmental impact on it is astronomical. So if we can, even increase the accuracy by 30 or 40%, we're making a major impact to the environment, and garments going to landfill, et cetera, et cetera. So that's our contribution.
Amazing. And I think this next question is perfectly set up to follow up with that, Carmin, because we really want to know, in terms of everything you just said, you're buying something online, you're returning it might end up in a landfill, it might get damaged. If it's fast fashion, it doesn't get back to a sales floor. What role do consumers and businesses play in driving the shift towards a more sustainable fashion industry? And I'm very interested in hearing specifically, how they work with that, with your company in terms of that, trying to save the planet.
Sure. We're working with some iconic brands right now, and we're actually speaking with Freed right now, who recognize there might be some potential for us to partner up. But we seem to attract the organizations that truly believe in sustainability and what we do. We're not having the fast fashion people knock on our doors. It's the luxury, iconic brand, sustainable people that are knocking on the door saying, "Hey, help us send our message out. We're really serious about what we mean with this sustainability." So, we're actively involved in integration of Shopify apparel customers, and we're hoping to impact that in the next little while. We're working with Rosen right now. Rosen became our touch point for the proof of our technology, and they acknowledge that it worked quite well. And Ian Rosen, who now is I believe he's the COO of the organization, recognized this technology would be needed years ago, and he partnered up with us, and we in turn proved our technology, and we're in implementation stage right now with them. So we can see this thing growing in the next little while, and we're pretty happy to be on the ride for sure. So
yeah, it takes time. So yeah, it's good to be on track with that. Marissa, what do you think?
Would you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know where Hillary is.
I think Hillary
yeah.
She froze.
I think she reset, or she'll join back.
I'd repeat the question for you. So it's around how consumers and big businesses, what role do they play in driving the shift towards more sustainable practices or the industry?
Thank you. I think it's really our duty as businesses in this space to do our best to educate the consumer on how to make better choices and what their options are. So I think Carmin brought up a really interesting point where he feels that Passen's able to work with, I'm trying to think of the right word, but more of a higher end, if you will, or higher quality, I think is a better way of saying it. Higher quality maker and seller of garments at this point. And I think that in itself is teaching consumers, okay, well, here's an offering that we're providing to you that'll allow you to purchase something that's going to fit correctly. And it's somebody who's committed to buying like I said, higher end garment, if you will. Higher end is not the right word. I think it's higher quality garment. And we're going to give you in every possible way an opportunity to make a better choice. So Carmin comes to the table and he's contributing to less landfill because you're trying to find a product that at the onset is going to fit, and you're not going to have back and forth. You're not going to have deliveries. You're not going to contribute in that sense, which is bad for the environment. And at the same time, you're going to be happy with your garment. You're now purchasing a garment that the likelihood, because it's a higher quality garment, is going to last longer, which is, another contributing factor. And then we can educate consumers about, both Shaun and I are doing our best possible for zero waste. And I think as a consumer sees more value add into spending a little bit more, it's an education for them. So they realize that perhaps fast fashion is easier to access from a price point at the onset, but the turnover of that garment and its contribution of landfill. So one, they're going to likely spend somewhat of the same amount of money by refreshing their wardrobe or their piece of apparel that's going to disintegrate, pill, fade, shrink, whatever it may be. And at the same time, they're going to be making a positive choice, which we're, I think, all together in our own way reinforcing for the consumer. So our job, I'll digress and bring it back to your initial question. I think our job is to really educate the consumer on what those offerings are out there and how we can help them make that better choice collectively.
That's absolutely correct, because I remember I have some clothes which are like 20 years old, but those were the expensive ones, the ones I
Of
invested
course.
in, and I still have them. And since childhood or teenage, I still have them. And the ones that I buy from maybe Shein or H&M, there's like ending up in the landfill, as you said, because there's like tons of it, which I wouldn't repeat much. So
Yeah, exactly.
I couldn't agree more too, just because like when I grew up on welfare. And so it was like, we didn't have you don't necessarily think that you should be saving to obviously buy these like high quality pieces. And now that I'm where I'm at in life, I can't imagine, first of all, not supporting small businesses, supporting the economy, the relationships you get to build with the designers, but then also these quality pieces where you buy one and you don't have to worry about it for 5 years. And I will throw it next to Shaun, who ironically enough recently mended some of my fast fashion for me because I don't know how to sew and I had all these problems. And in my quest for sustainability, I went to Shaun. How do you feel about the role that consumers and businesses play in driving the shift towards a more sustainable fashion industry, Shaun?
Well, I think Carmin and Marissa both they said it really well in that 10 years ago, brands would just make things and give it to the consumer, and basically it was the consumer's problem. But today we find ourselves where it's a shared problem. It's not only the consumer's responsibility to be sustainable, but it's also the brand, the producers, the middlemen. It's everyone. So it's like a shared collective. And like they both said, there's a lot more education and knowledge about sustainability now. In fact, there are even laws being passed, which is great, because we need those as sort of like a method to make sure people recycle or are more sustainable. And I believe there are more incentives today for recycling and repurposing and reusing. So yes, I don't think today there should be an excuse not to be sustainable. And also, if you look at the news, even whether you believe in global warming or not, things are happening. It's hotter, it's colder, or it's not cold at all. I mean, it's February in Toronto, and what? It's going to be 8 degrees at some point this week? I can't believe it. So I do think they're absolutely on consumer, producer in all aspects and at different stages of the life cycle of the product. Everybody has to have a sort of dedicated effort towards being sustainable. And I think that it'll definitely make a difference, if not in our lifetime, in the future to come.
absolutely. And we've already been seeing this with the weather conditions being very brutal this year, record breaking winter in Alberta or all over Canada.
Or the wildfires, it's hottest, yeah.
Exactly. This last year has been
Yeah.
brutal, and so will this year be. So you're absolutely right that it's taking a toll on everyone now. So it's more than ever necessary that we implement all those practices. So, Shaun, what do you think? How do you think you would impact the fashion industry through sustainable endeavors at your organization? Or if I were to put it this way, How do you think some of the trends that are ongoing, how do we play a role in that regard as a small business or owning a business in this sector specifically?
Great question. Fashion, I think years ago, fashion was all about the trends. It was all about um, what was popular at the moment, what to do, or what we would buy, or who we were following. I think it still does exist, but as I mentioned before, people are more educated now, and in the sense are more knowledgeable about fast fashion and about making multiple purchases. And also, Marissa, a great point about how people are buying secondhand or vintage. I mean, I think that's a great trend, and I believe it's catching on really fast. Or renting rent the runway or organizations like that.
Mhm.
So as a small business, I try to incorporate it from the beginning to the end. Um, how we would view trends. I mean, I can talk about in general, but it's to each their own in terms of their capacity, their lifestyle, where they stand in life, what they can afford. If each person could make a difference on their own, whether it be a more thoughtful purchase or fewer purchases, or if you have to buy fast fashion, taking care of your clothes. Like Hillary, thank you so much for coming to me. One of the 7 R's of fashion sustainability, it was repairing, and and yeah, a lot of people are resorting to that as well. I think it's like repair, reuse. I'm not going to go through all the 7 R's because I'm going to miss something, but if we could incorporate those in different aspects of our wardrobe, I think it would be great for the environment, for us, and for the industry. Fashion is, after all, one of the most polluting industries
Oh,
in
yeah.
the world.
Yeah, it has a lion's share of the
Yes.
pollution. So
Yep.
you're absolutely right. But what do you think, Carmen? Do you agree with that? Do consumers or the end producers or manufacturers, do they need to take the responsibility for that, or what do you think? How would your organization come into play in terms of implementing or um, making your voice count?
Yeah, well, I think that we need to do a better job of recognizing companies like Freed. Wuxley's another good one. These are companies that they walk the talk. They don't just fly the
Mm.
sustainability flag. It's embedded in their DNA, right? So we need to do a better job of recognizing those kinds of companies in Canada and abroad, because they mean something to us. They're in essence the pioneers for the future and sustainability for clothing. So, and it's quite admirable. I know that Hillary met James from Wuxley. He's an incredible person, like Marissa, and we need to put those people at the forefront and show the world what they're doing, and that they're forsaking huge profits
Mhm.
for a strong message and the future, right? And that's basically the nutshell. So, sooner or later, fashion companies will get to the point where they have to make a decision between what's best for everybody, including the earth and everything else, or making money. And I think that in the next little while, they're going to be forced to make more sound decisions on what's best for everybody, including the planet. So that's
Yes,
my
and we
take on
want
it.
and we do want those efforts to be very sincere because, as Hillary brought it up, greenwashing is a major issue right now. People are doing it just for the sake of it, just so that their business is profitable because they know consumers trends have changed that way in favor of sustainability, which is why some of those are just using that as a label. So, Marissa, do you think the onus is on the consumers, or what's the right way to deal with the situation?
Do I think the onus is on everybody. I think back to what Shaun was saying originally about how it's a shared collective. I
Mhm.
think that that's a commitment as of mankind, and I think that we all need to recognize that and figure out. I mean, it's a very interesting time in the world to even deep dive into that. But I think as human beings, we need to really take a look in the mirror and truly say, how do we better the world we're living in and that our kids are going to grow up in, or our future kids are going to grow up in, or our friends, or just, it's everybody, right? So I think that the onus is shared.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I am curious what intricacies specifically in your brand that you need to consider to maintain the sustainability goals that you have. Marissa, I'll start with you. So for Freed and Freed, in what capacity and what are the Freed and Freed goals? Because like I said at the beginning with greenwashing, it is different for everybody right now. So what does that look like for your organization?
I think from our organization, our biggest commitment is zero waste. And I think the nuance, perhaps, that we struggle with is when repurposing a collection, it's two-pronged. Number one, you want to ensure that you're positioning it appropriately for the consumer to understand that you bred new life into a garment. It's still as high quality as its predecessor, if you will. It's still, it still has all of the offerings that its original shape had. And at the same time, to also understand that this is a contribution as a company, from, I suppose, like a labor position. So obviously we don't upcharge for a repurposed garment, but it's important to know that that's something, back to what Carmin was saying, that we take on that cost in order to ensure that we're not contributing to landfill and we're not driving overconsumption. We don't want you to buy a product that you're only going to wear for one season. And if that means that we need to revisit some pieces from the season prior to repurpose, then that's our commitment. So I think that it's trying to educate the consumer to understand what we're doing and what we're putting out there and why it is of value and a high quality garment.
Amazing, of course. And I think that, like, I'd like to think, at least for most organizations, of course, you want consumers to come back, but I think you want them to come back and buy new things. You want them to buy the one thing that they loved and cherish it forever and show it off and celebrate this one piece that you did it right. They're a fan, etc. And so I think that's a wonderful answer. Shaun, what about you? What intricacies are specific to Demascare in terms of your sustainability goals, especially as a small business?
So, yep, as a small business, I'm really happy that I get to, because I'm the founder and I just started, it's been 2 years, I get to make all the decisions regarding how the business is set up. So from the get-go, sustainability has always meant a lot to me. And I knew that I didn't want to make bulk items, or I didn't want to mass produce. So I work on a made-to-order business model. Or slow fashion, it goes by different terms. It's basically a very thoughtfully made, well-designed pieces that will be in people's wardrobes for a long time. And what I'm hearing from Marissa and Carmin is that thoughtfulness. We put so much thought into what we're doing, and that's what adds to the value of our goods. And I'm so happy that consumers today are thinking the same way, in that they are willing to pay for products that have that quality, have that value, have that good design, because they know it's going to last them a long time, as opposed to pieces that would have not, fast fashion, that would have lasted for a season if they're lucky. Slow fashion. I love like designing. That's something that I can do with my eyes closed. I just love doing it. But the most time that I've spent putting into this business is how I go from making those pieces to how they're going to last, or how they're going to end up with the consumer, or what happens after the end of life. Because initially it was that linear thought where you make, sell, and then it's gone. You don't have to see it. But now it's more of like, yes, design, make, sell, but what it's going to come back to you. You have to figure out how it's going to come back to you in some way. And I'm not going to lie, it's really hard as a small business to figure out how the things you make are going to come back to you, and at the same time you have to give the consumer some incentive. But it's just like building a reputation where once they believe in you, they're going to come back to you, and you build loyalty and things like that. So different things like that. And then being a small business and being locally in Toronto, I get my fabrics from here as much as I can. I look for dead stock, or I look for just one-offs, because my pieces will be exclusive and one of a kind. And I work with local contractors, so I'm keeping it as much as I like my carbon footprint. I'm trying to minimize it as much as possible. And it's a great journey. I'm learning a lot, and I'm so happy that there are so many designers in this country who are working in the same sustainable mindset. They're inspiring. I looked at you both, Marissa and Carmin, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So thank you for all that you guys do. And those are my thoughts.
Amazing. Perfect. And Carmin, what about you? I mean, again, we've highlighted.
I think we lost Carmin.
We may have lost Carmin, and that's okay. That's okay. I will add, and this isn't to gush about what I know, and I'm sure Mercy must do the same thing. But Shaun, I've also seen you network and try to learn. I think one of the first times we met was at sustainable events, and I do think that there's, at least in Toronto, there's this like semblance of a sustainable community of like we're all trying to be little environmentalists. So we have to find each other and help each other be better.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I do like that about here, and the fact that you see the people trying to make the effort, and that thoughtfulness and community. Carmin, what about you and the intricacies of Passen specifically? Like how do you impart your sustainability and your sustainable endeavors?
Well, we have a pretty cool contribution to this, right? I mean, I'm sure everyone talked about that one or two pieces of apparel they have in their closet and they've had for many years, right? So there's some consistency in those pieces of apparel. One is that they look really good on you, right? The color is good with your skin, but probably the biggest factor is the fit. It just fits perfect. It just fits right, and it's good in all the right spots, right? So if we can make sure that the piece of apparel that you receive when you're ordering your clothing has and is able to fit you just that way, we know you're going to keep it longer, okay? And that means you're not going to order more apparel, you're not going to send it back, et cetera, et cetera. So, less purchasing, longer wearing is our goal, right? So, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we're cutting into, apparel companies' profit, because I can assure you the cost of returns outweighs that by tenfold. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember doing a survey on this where the most important problem that consumers were facing with regards to the fashion industry or getting the right clothing was the perfect fit, because they weren't able to find the right fit for themselves, and alterations are not easy here. It's very expensive. It's as expensive as getting a new product. So that is a big problem. And if companies can solve that, I think that solves a major problem for them, and keeping sustainability in mind as well. And with that in mind, my next question leads me to the question where I want some clarity, or I want to give the viewers some clarity about what kind of ways can we ensure that our practices are sustainable. There's so much that goes on. It's not just labor, the sourcing, manufacturing, the right fabric, the right fit. There's so much. So where do we start, and what kind of tools can we use to equip companies or startups or different businesses in the industry who want to make sure their businesses are sustainable? Is it tech? Is it the right policies? Is it the right channel through which it's to be distributed? What are different ways that we can keep in mind when we think about sustainability? And I'd start with you, Shaun. What do you think as a small business? What have you noticed, and what should we focus on?
Well, it's interesting that Carmin was talking about fit, because it's a pun on fit, but I think you have to do what fits best with you in terms of a business or consumer. I think knowledge is power. So because that's what I struggled with is I wanted to be zero waste. I wanted to be fully sustainable. And then after I did all my research, I was like, how the am I going to be sustainable as a small business? Because it it takes a lot of money. It really takes a lot of money. I don't think people
Yeah.
know that, but maybe, I mean, consumers may know that because when they pay more for sustainable goods, there is a higher value attached to that. But that's why. Because if sustainability was so easy, everybody would be doing it. Um, so to answer your question, I think back to knowledge, you have to, as a consumer, I think you need to do your research. Brands now have sustainability title pages on their websites or on their Instagram or whatever, but it's not just, oh, if they say they're sustainable, they are, because of all the greenwashing that's been going on. Actually, to digress, I think the European Union just passed a law that greenwashing has now become illegal, or no, you get fined. Yeah, so I hope that comes to North America. I really do, because I think, I mean, or globally, we would all benefit from it. So to come back, yeah, do your research, read up, and I think we all have a good gauge of being able to discern if a brand is being authentic or if they're not being genuine. I mean, you can tell by their actions. If things seem vague, you know that something's not right there. And then as a designer, I take it extremely seriously. So, be it where if I go and look for dead stock fabrics, or I go to fabric providers who specifically have all the certifications, the OCO Tech certification, or if it's if I do my research on like plant-based fibers. I know, Marissa, you guys are vegan fabrics, like animal-free products and stuff. So that's amazing.
I know, Kotex.
Yep. So all this would, and that's where I got it from. I got it from her website. So if you went to the website, sorry, I'm not putting you on the.
Everybody go to my website, quick!
Don't worry, we'll be plugging the websites at the end, so you hold on to that. I was like, I have to tell them.
Hilarious.
But yeah, so things like that, and also in terms of the other practices of how the clothes are made, I think Remake. There are a lot of organizations that are amazing. Remake, Fashion Takes Action, the Remakes Who Made My Clothes campaign, Fashion Revolution. These are all places on Instagram or social media or websites or whatever that I go to educate myself. So it's out there. We just have to make the effort to do it and then actually put it into practice. I think practicing what you preach is really important. It's hard in the beginning, but once you make a habit of it, you don't think about it anymore.
Yes, absolutely. And do you think, Marissa, we have enough tools to support that, or do we need more? Obviously, we need, as Shaun mentioned, we do need some policies that the government should implement. It's high time. But do you think we have enough tools?
I think Shaun touched on a lot of important things in what he was saying. So, first and foremost, yes, I agree that I think everything that you said is important. Every single piece is important for us as a consumer, and practicing what you preach in the fashion industry is probably one of the hardest things. I can't speak for Carmin because I don't know Carmin, his perspective on the fashion industry itself. But Shaun, just hearing you speak, I can resonate with where you're coming from. So I think, growing up, from Winnipeg, Manitoba, I was definitely the girl that stuck out, that was obsessed with fashion. And being obsessed with fashion, you want to change your look. You want to, it goes on and on and on. And it becomes like this commitment to shopping to get the look that you're trying to achieve. So when everybody does practice what they preach and they realize that we can purchase higher quality garments that can be worn in different ways, and then that lends itself to not over purchasing, and then it all sort of trickles down. I think that's a great step. And again, I'll mirror what Shaun said about doing what suits you best and what fits you and what makes you feel like here is my first step. And all we can really do is each do our best to take that initial step and see how that evolves. And then again, like to policy, well, if we look at Copenhagen, they have a Sustainable Fashion Week. And, that's also being adopted by other places across Europe. And I think that that's something that I hope will continue to progress and be adopted in the fashion space. And I do agree that there's a lot of greenwashing going on, and it is, on the consumer to do some research and understand who they're working with. But I also think, like Carmin said, outside of the fact that now we have access to a software that, way back when we didn't, and we would buy a bunch of different pieces and, oh, well, this didn't cost that much. So, maybe I'm going to just leave it in my closet or toss it, or, you return something. And if we look at, the Amazons of the world, that,
Garbage.
I don't want to speak poorly about any business, but we all know where a lot of the returned items are going. So that's helpful. But again, educating ourselves, accepting that we may spend more money up front, because all of us in the background, myself, Carmin, Shaun, we're investing to make you a higher quality garment so it will last. And whether that be in the fit, whether that be in the materials, whether that be in our processes, I think just that becoming the way that we now shop and looking for longevity and looking for something to be worn in different ways and by different people, whether it be that then it can be handed down. There's so many things to look at and so many opportunities for us to do better right from the get-go. We don't have to all of a sudden become new people. We just have to take that initial step. And I think all of us sitting on this panel right now having this discussion is showing how we're all doing our own job at making a difference in our own little way. And hopefully this is an invitation for other people who are listening to all of us saying, well, okay, like I connect with Hillary on this, I connect with Samaya on this, I connect with Shaun, I connect with Carmin or myself, and they can find their way to take that initial step. And as long as we keep going down that path, I think that the future is already going to look brighter and is already a more positive impact by each and every one of us.
So well said. I think we've come a long way, and we still need a lot of effort to spread awareness and reach where we actually need to be today. So, and I especially love the idea of a sustainable fashion week. I think we should absolutely have it here.
It's really something special.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So, Carmin, do you think we have enough things to consider, or what is something that's lacking right now in terms of supporting all these things?
Yeah, I think it's, I think where we're going to start to see the tides change is when it starts to impact people's businesses in terms of sales and profitability. There's Andrew Langer, and he's a PhD of luxury, and he made a bold statement a few months ago where he felt that 50% of the luxury brands today will not be in existence in 2030. Because of sustainability, lack of movement towards the sustainability front, as the Gen Zs come up and start to purchase things with a purpose. If there's not a cause behind their purchase, they're not going to buy it. And he feels that a lot of these luxury brands just don't get it, and it's almost too late. So I urge you, if you have some time, to flip through his stuff. Dr. Andrew Langer, he's a PhD at Pepperdine University. He's got some pretty incredible thoughts on sustainability and luxury. So,
yeah, and definitely, I think Gen Zs I see a major difference in the trends right now with Gen Z is because they do their research into where they're going to
Yes.
buy every product, and they need to have a story behind everything that they put their money in. And they don't just want the materialistic value, but they also want value, the figurative value that's behind every product. So
Very
I think
true.
that is something that everybody could adapt.
Yeah, the new gen, they very much want like authenticity and to be woke. And I do hope that if our generation wasn't the answer, hopefully the next generation can be the answer to saving the planet while looking very good while doing it, hopefully. And I really like what Marissa said. And I guess in a way, this is a great way to end this beautiful episode with a call to, if anyone was moved by anything, I think reach out to any and all of us in some capacity. Learn more about other sustainable brands as well and endeavors. Do your research. Adopt what you can within the means that work for you. We don't expect everyone to change their entire wardrobe and spend a bunch of money overnight, but learning more about some of the materials we're all using, the tech we're all using, our slow fashion methods would be a great way to take anything away from this episode. Shaun, Marissa, and Carmin, I want to thank you all so much for being a part of this episode. I'll start with Marissa and put you on the spot, but that means Shaun and Carmin, you're next. Marissa, if anyone wants to learn more about Freed, where would they go?
Well, you can always DM us on Instagram at Freed and Freed. Our website is freedandfreed.com. And we would love to hear from any of you. We are here to answer any questions about any of our sustainable practices. And we really hope that Canadians join in other Canadians, because this is one area that together we have better control over. And, I think, like you said, Hillary, just open for conversation, learn more. The more you learn, the better you can do.
Absolutely. And Shaun, what about you if anyone wants to learn more?
Oh, sure. You can find me on Instagram at Demascare. Or my website is demascare.ca. I'm in the process of building it. But like Marissa said, open to any communication or just DM me on Instagram. And I think it's really important, especially like being in Canada, that to be just that collective of Canadian designers and anybody in the industry. We're all here to help each other and learn from each other. You could never go wrong with that. And the fashion industry, I mean, as competitive as it is, I really think it's stronger and better when all of us work together. So I'm all for that.
Absolutely. And I will just take 1 second to spell out Demascare as Demascare. Freed and Freed is like freedom. You're freed and you're free. Freed and free.
Thanks,
that one
Hillary.
was much more easy. No worries. And Carmin, what about you? If anyone wants to learn more about Passen and the wonderful tech stuff you've got going on, where would they go?
Sure. I mean, we can do a couple of things. You can go on to passen.com
It's still there.
and go through our website, or you can actually download our app from the Apple iStore. It's yeah. Can you not hear me? Hello?
No, we can.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yeah. So okay. So okay, terrific. So I urge you to go on to the Apple App Store and download. You can search Passen Digital Fit, download the app, and try the experience yourself. And I think you'll be pretty impressed with what you see. So you can actually go on there and get your body scanned, and we'll give you all your sizes. It's free of charge, and you might be able to use it for something else. So
I'm gonna download this right away. I don't know why I didn't have it before. I'm gonna do that right now.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Terrific.
and to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe for the next one in the series and leave a comment and share with others.
And until next time, everybody, stay fashionable.